Hey, Rifters, welcome to the show. Subscriber review. We got a great show today. I've been wanting to interview this guy for a while. You know him from everything. He's been on Stranger Things, Mad About You, Aliens. He has a new special out on comedy dynamics called Life, Death, and Rice Pudding. I'm very excited to talk to him. Like I said, he's a comic hero of mine. The great Paul Reiser is going to be here. Oh, wait, he's here. Hi, Paul Reiser.
Oh my gosh, I'm here already. Thank you so much. So now, thank you for all those flowery introductions. So I just did a talk show, and they said the same thing. They go, and you can see it on Comedy Dynamics. I went, that's not really it. It's presented by Comedy Dynamics, but you can watch it anywhere you buy or rent stuff.
Oh, I'm
Apple
sorry.
on Apple or Amazon or DirecTV or whatever, which is a drag. I have the special, and I also have a movie out. And my sister called me. She's in Florida. She said, "I have to pay for your movie." I went, "Yeah, rent it. It's $5." She goes, "But why can't I go?" Because that's how it is. Just you got to rent it or buy it, and you'll enjoy it. So I apologize for anybody who doesn't feel moved enough.
I'm a big believer that family should support you as well. Like, because
Well,
I
let me
do
give you
stand up, they always
let
want
me
free
yes
tickets.
let, let me give you my sister's home number, and maybe you can talk to her. Although now I don't know about you, I'm not a fan of necessarily a family coming to my live shows. I don't that throws me.
Oh
Doesn't
yeah,
doesn't it distract you a little bit?
it definitely does because here's the thing about me, and my family doesn't think I'm funny. So
Uh,
they only
that's
go when I opened up for Norm or Bob Saget or something. Like that's the only time they go.
so you only open up for people who have passed. That
Un-
that's unfortunate.
Unfortunately,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay, that's gonna be a setback.
yeah.
Yeah, my son who had never seen me work live, and he was well into his 20s, and he came to this recording of the special, and I wanted him to see it, but in the back of my head, I do a lot of stuff. I talk about my family and my kids, and I was constantly anxious for the duration of the show that at any point he would yell out, "Not true, exaggerated." I go, yeah, but he didn't. God bless him. He was very contained and well behaved.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just think it's just one of those things. I mean, you've been doing comedy forever. I mean,
Forever,
was it
since the
like that
invention of of,
too?
my, of the microphone.
Yeah,
Uh, I know I was in the beginning. That's all you have, right?
yeah,
I remember the first really early on. I mean, I think I've been doing comedy less than a year, maybe 6 months or less. And there was a little club in New York where I started, where I am right now, and they said, "Oh, we're going to give you a headlining gig." All I had done was like audition nights, and they said, "Oh,
yeah.
you can headline our Monday night show." I went, it was like a restaurant cabaret, and they said, "Do you have a what did you say? Do you have a following?" I went, "I don't have a following." They go, "Well, you invite." So my parents came. They invited 12 friends. So there were about 18, 20 people in the audience, 90% of which were at my parents' table. And
Yeah.
it didn't dawn on me till well after the show. I went, "Oh, that's why they let me headline. Monday is a slow night. We'll bring some idiot and he'll invite his family and they'll have dinner and we'll make a couple of bucks." So it wasn't quite the prestige gig that I thought it was.
It's also like because like when I started comedy, there was this thing called bringer shows, which I didn't know about. Where
Bringer.
like yeah, where you have to bring five people to perform or
Yeah, well, that's
something.
what this was. But they
Yeah.
didn't sell it. They packaged it much more flatteringly. Like, "Oh, you're going to be headlining, so let everybody know. Woo, look at me. I'm headlining a show that's an empty room until
Yeah.
my family comes." So it was basically as if I was, working the Thanksgiving table.
Yeah. And I was 17 years old. It was my first set, and it was at this club called the Ha Ha, and I didn't know what his bringer was. And they said, "Oh, you can't go up unless you have five people." And on Lancashire Boulevard at the time, there's a lot of, ladies of the night. So I
Oh my
paid the ladies of the night
God.
to come see me.
Wow. Wow, that's sad. That's
I
sad.
know, but that's how much I loved
Did
comedy.
did did they laugh?
I don't know. I mean, it was my first time, so I know I didn't do great. You know what I mean? I didn't get good
Did you
until like 3 years ago, to be honest.
Oh, well, it takes a while, and what's nuts in the beginning, often you think you're doing well. I don't think, we're sort of, you're protected by this exoskeleton of naivete and ignorance when you get off and you go, I think I did pretty good. And you
Yeah.
only years later, you listen to the tape and you go, Jesus Christ, just, that should not have happened.
I actually said this.
Yeah. What was I thinking? But you know what? I cringe when usually if I watch an old clip of mine and then think, oh, but I'd rather that than look at an old clip and go, boy, I used to have it.
Yeah.
You want to be going that way. You want to be getting better over the years.
Yeah, definitely. And I wanted to ask you about your stand-up special that's out now because, to my knowledge, I know you said that you had one in the 90s, but to my
Yeah.
knowledge, this is the first one that in my generation knows of you. You know what I mean? So I wanted to know,
Yeah.
what was that process like? Like, did you just wake up and say, "Hey, I need a special now," or what? Like,
Not that I needed it. Um, well, I took a long time off. It's weird. I was one of the guys that all I wanted to do was stand up. I didn't, it wasn't like I'm going to just do this until I get discovered, quote, and then I'll get TV and I'll never have to. No, I loved stand up, so that was all I wanted to do. And then I kind of got these lucky breaks that kept leading to things. And, uh, and it sort of culminated in the 90s when I got Mad About You. I put stand up on the back burner, not by design, just because I was busy and I didn't have the time to do it well,
yeah,
and that so when it was over in 99, I was kind of happy to not do anything. I was just staying home. We had a new kid and we just moved to a new house, and I was happy being home. With my mind, I'm always going to get back to stand up, but I kept putting it off until it really was like 2011 or something, 2012. I just said I got to, there's no other way to do it than just to do it. So I
yeah,
went back to the clubs, and it was an experience. On one hand, it was really exciting, and it felt, I was whatever in my 60s or 50s, I guess, and it felt as exciting as it was when I was 18 and went on for the first time. Um, yeah, and there are not a lot of things you can do in your 60s that feel as good as they did when you were 20. Um, but the muscle had atrophied, so I could write a bit. I had the advantage that I could just go to the clubs,
yeah.
and I used to go to the main club down there in Hermosa Beach, a Comedy and Magic Club, which is really, I think, the best, most welcoming club in the world.
It's like top
And,
three in the country, isn't it?
yeah, and they just always been just so supportive and of comics, and so anyway, so when I said, can I just come down and work on some stuff, and they said absolutely. I come in the audience at this point, well, we recognize this guy from TV. He's like, so nice round of applause and woo woo, and then that lasts 8 seconds, and then they're just looking at you like, what is it you wanted to tell us? I'm like, okay, that's the part I haven't figured out. Yeah, I don't have that yet. And I would have a couple of bits. And I remember, it's funny, man. I I was talking to some of the guys who were headlining at the time. I remember Sebastian, and I had missed an entire generation like of comics like yourself can come up, and guys who were doing well, and some guys selling out, and I never seen him. So Sebastian, who was not at the time, he was not as huge as he is now.
Yeah.
But I remember he was just really funny. I said, so let me ask you, I haven't done it. When you headline a theater or a club, how long do you do? He goes, 60, 70. I go, 70? That's impossible. I have 4 minutes and they're not good. And it was inconceivable to me. And then I would just go back, a couple of times a week. And then I would have 5 minutes that were okay. And then 7 minutes. And it's on one hand, it's the material. You start accumulating material, but also you get your muscle back.
Oh
And
yeah.
it's brain. It's like, oh, just I remember it was a good solid year before I felt I could do a whole show, and actually have the nerve to charge people to come to a show. And the first time I did an hour, I said, I don't know if I can do it. And the minute I did it, I was like, oh yeah, this is great. But it's just a mental thing, of remembering and also making leaps. Like, you know what, I'm going to go to this bit. Oh, you know what? Let me circle back. That
Yeah.
muscle had atrophied, and it just like anything else, it needed to be worked out.
Well, I'm one of those guys who believes like once a stand-up, you're always a stand-up. So even if you take time off, you still
Mm-hmm.
know how to do it, even though you
Yeah.
might be like a little scared or insecure,
Well,
but
it's
you still got it.
but the muscle, it's like if you play basketball your whole life and you don't play for 5 years,
Yeah.
you know how to do it. I know where the ball goes, but ow,
Yeah. I can't
and
compete with
I can't
LeBron.
jump. The legs, they're not firing. The arm is not moving. So you got to, and a lot of it was physical too. It's like, oh, I got to remember how to be sharp beyond 8:30 at night.
Yeah.
I hadn't done that. I went, oh, I gotta go to bed earlier and get some sleep.
Now, I wanted to ask you because you said that when you were on Mad About You, you stopped doing stand-up to focus on the show. And I wanted to ask that, like, if you remember that feeling, how maybe if you were doing stand-up during the show, like maybe like the tickets will be coming like really high price. But now Mad About You 2 came out with the rerun. You were still doing stand-up. So like how, like, do you remember how your mind shifted?
Well, when during the original run, I didn't make a decision like I'm gonna quit stand. I just didn't. I was busy, so
Yeah.
it didn't come up. And the crazy thing is, I remember I was getting all these huge offers, huge bucks. They're like, "Do you go here?" I go, "Well, I don't have my act." And they go, "Then it doesn't matter." I go, "Yeah, I can't do that. I'm not going to go and take a check and then suck." And I also didn't want to just dust off my last whatever my set was before Mad About You. I thought I wanted to come up with new stuff, and I just didn't have the brain, the bandwidth to do it. And I love stand up too much to deliberately or consciously do it badly. So
Right.
I just kept. So I remember, and then when it was over, I said, "So where are those big, $500,000 shows?" Like, yeah, those are gone. You got to be on the air. I went, oh, I thought they would be still. No, they're gone. Okay. So how about Chuck Chucks in Cleveland for $11? Okay. Um,
Will they at
you
least
know,
fly you to Cleveland?
now you walk. Um, but yeah, so then 2012 or so, and I was back and I was working and I was, and I was loving it, and I felt I was getting stronger and getting better, and your perspective changed. Your confidence builds. And so I remember I had a couple of shows actually when we did. It was only 6 months or so that we did the reboot in 2019, and by that point I was already up and running. I remember I did a couple of shows on weekends during that run, and that was fine. I was
Yeah.
I was no longer out of shape, so that was fun.
Yeah. I just think like that is so interesting because it's the same show and then like, two different versions of what you were doing. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, but they're very different. Stand up. Mad About You was first it's scripted, and I'm playing tennis. Against with Helen Hunt and the other great actors, and so you're not you're not. It's not all about you. You're servicing a show, and but some of the material overlap. I was
Right.
certainly a lot of stuff that I was doing in my stand up. I would try and like ripple into the scripts because like it was about in 92 when Mad About You came out, it was being newly married and newlywed stuff. And
Yeah.
now 20 years later it's like, all right, let me talk about what a relationship is like when you've been together for 1,000 years. But it's funny, you said why did I do a special? And I was adverse to doing it for a while. I had offers and I thought I, it's so hard to write material and polish it and feel good about it. It's like I didn't want to burn it up. I
Oh
go,
yeah,
if I
definitely.
do it, and then I got to kiss it goodbye, which is not 100% true. I think people, if they see a special, they go, I want to hear that bit. But
Yeah.
um, you know what it was also? First of all, it took me a while just to feel confident enough to go, you know what, I can burn this hour and I'll write another one. Um, but also, I'd watch a lot of other specials. And sometimes I just go, I go, well, I want to play with everybody. I want to do that. But it was also sometimes it was, I just wrote a bit like that guy wrote. She just did. And I went, you know what? I gotta stake my claim. Like, here, let me put a public record. I did this bit. So if you come up with one afterwards, that's on you. But I didn't want anybody to go, oh, he must have seen it from me. No, I wrote it myself, but we just came up with the same rough idea.
No,
And
yeah.
that always bothers me more than it should. And I have friends who'll go, well, everybody's got a bit about this or about that. I go, yeah, but it feels less funny if I've just seen somebody else do something similar. you know.
But it's also if you change dynamics, it's fair game. You know what I mean? It's not because
Yeah,
everyone has a different story.
true, for sure. Yes, and you're filtering all your material through who you are and your personality and who they know you to be, or who you present to be anyway. But that's why when sometimes for me anyway, I know when I come up with a bit, I go, all right, you know what? I don't think somebody's going to come up with that. That's very specific and it's a different perspective. And it's sometimes I'll come up with a bit and I go, that's funny. Well, that's pretty low hanging fruit. You know what I mean? There's seven other guys who are going to do basically that. So like, throw it away.
So here's the problem I'm having because I have an hour special and I'm working on my new hour, but the problem is I'm still doing like 5 to 7 minutes of my old hour in this new hour just to get the crowd warmed up for
Yeah,
this net. And that to me, I gotta
I
get rid of that.
I I I wrestle with that. I have a couple of shows. I did for me anyway, a lot more live shows in the last year working up to the special, um, and sort of tapering off at the moment. And I think, well, what so I'm working on new stuff, and then I have certainly a good hour of stuff that was not in the special, but it's not new. So like
Right.
it'll be new to the next special. But if somebody came and saw me last year, they may go, "We heard that," which I have to try and be less precious about that. And it's not really apples and oranges, but I go, when I see Springsteen, I don't go, "I heard Hungry Heart last time." Like, no, I'm happy to hear it again. And comics don't have quite the same luxury that Springsteen has.
No, definitely. And I think music and comedy too just have different adventures like that. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
especially and there's a when you see a musician live, even if you know the song, you go, let's hear what they do with it live. And certainly Springsteen is, the greatest live performer in the world. I think sometimes you go see a band that and the complaint is, it sounds exactly like the record. I could have just put the record on. You have to reinvent it and reinvigorate it in some way when you see somebody live.
Yeah.
But again, for comics, they're coming to see the material, but they're coming to see you. You like or you don't have to like the person, but you enjoy that personality, whatever it is, and that's what you're tuning into. So I'm still discovering. I really feel like I'm still learning what I can do and what I cannot do. And sometimes I'll watch clips or I'll watch the special and I go, oh man, I wish I could tighten that. I wish I would take that. Just let's keep the pace up. And at the
Yeah.
same time, there's other bits where I go, you know what? It's okay. You can tell a story. You can they're here. They're listening. It's not they're not walking out if you take 40 seconds to tee up a story.
Well, another thing about you, which I think you have an advantage of, is, because Mad About You was such a great show, and it really like it was it was a show that I felt gave a lot of like married couples hope. You know what I mean? And I feel like when people see you after shows or a meet and greet, they could tell you how much an episode changed their lives or something like that. So I think
Yeah,
like
that's
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 a
been it.
beautiful thing.
That is a really nice thing. And I've talked about this when the show was on in the 90s. There wasn't social media. You didn't get the feedback. Sometimes people would write letters, good or bad, but we were busy and we were, so I wasn't even out in the world. I was really working on the show. And so I didn't really clock the impact that it had. I could
Yeah.
say, all right, I heard it's number 10, it's number 20, it's number 30 in the show, whatever. But it wasn't until I went out and did stand up. And then afterwards, outside signing books or taking pictures or whatever, and people would invariably come up with a story like that. And they would say, oh, that line, my wife and I do that all the time, or we got married to your theme song. I was like, really? It's like, and often it'd be very heartfelt things about, we really got together because of a thing in the episode. And like, well, and that it's really heartwarming and lovely to hear. But, it's funny when the audiences laugh, you know, you, I always tell people, I'm not smart enough to make anything up. I'm just going to tell you what happened. Here's what
Right.
happened to my house. Here's what I'm going through. And they're laughing because they're going, oh, this guy sounds like me. Thank you. It's not just me. But what they don't necessarily know is that I'm on stage going, okay, thank God they're laughing. So it's not just me either. So, we're kind of enjoying the fact that this is all of us, right? Okay, good. Good to know. Which
Oh,
is a great play. It's a great way to make a living.
yeah. Well, Paul, I want to respect your time, but I have two more questions. So if you
Take your
got
time. I'm
fat,
good.
oh,
I'm
okay.
good.
I wanted to ask you about Diner because I think Diner is one of the best comedies ever, and I think that when you got it, you were doing stand up, and did you know the magic it has like when you read it, or did you just think, oh, it's just a job to me?
It was neither of those. I didn't quite know the magic. I
Yeah,
certainly didn't, and I don't think anybody could. Reading it on paper, you wouldn't get what the movie was going to be, and it certainly wasn't just a job because I had never had a job. That was my first job, so
right.
I was just thrilled. Like I'm going to be in a movie, and it's an MGM movie, and there's a lion on the cover page. Wow, this is cool. And I got there. I go, look, there's trucks and cameras. Wow, and so it was. I was literally a kid. I was such a so unschooled, and it was all exciting to me. So the movie could have sucked, and I still would have had a great time. And then when it came out, I went, "Oh, this is funny and beautiful and deep." And and it's ironic because it ended up being not ironic, but it's beyond just being a good movie. It became a bit of a classic. I mean, it's really stood the test of time, and it was uh, in many ways sort of spawned a whole bunch of comedy that came afterwards. And just in the, that dialogue heavy, certainly Mad About It gave me the confidence like, oh, you can have moments where you're just being real. And what people are responding to is like, oh, that actually just sounds real. Those are two people talking real. Um, and that's not always easy to recreate.
Yeah. I thought it was great. So like, and the cool thing about that is when you experience that, you were one from one. You know what I mean? You're like, ah, this is great.
I should have gotten out of the business right there, batting 1,000.
Uh, and then my last question is, if you could go into a time machine and talk to a younger Paul Reiser, tell him everything you know now, what advice would you tell yourself?
Well, there are a couple of sweaters I would have advised against wearing. I go, that's just don't. You're going to regret that sweater. Uh, I don't know. I think anybody, as you get older, you look back and the first thing you want to say is like, don't worry as much. Don't fret. Like, don't worry what the other guy is doing, what other people are thinking. Just, it's wasted energy. And certainly I could have used that piece of advice. Just go, do your thing, because it's all going to not matter in the end anyway.
Yeah, awesome. I'm so glad you said that and you didn't say, "Hey, Paul, if Keith Reza asks you to do his podcast, say no."
Well, believe me, I see that now. If I could go back like a half an hour, a time capsule going back 25, 30 minutes, believe me, that would be the first thing I say.
Uh, well, thank you so much for saying
My
yes.
pleasure. Thanks for
Where can
having
the
me.
folks follow you? Do you have a social media or?
Yeah, I'm on X. You should excuse the expression, and Instagram. And so the special is out, and I have a movie that I'm really proud of called "The Problem with People," which is also you got to rent it or buy it on iTunes or Amazon or on your cable TV. And that was a movie that I wrote and was really pushing uphill for a while, for a couple of years. So that's and it's ironic that it's coming out finally when the special is coming out. So it looks like I'm busier than I actually feel, but I'm proud of that. And yeah, the special, I was really pleased with the special. So I hope everybody checks it out and has a good time.
All right. Well, thanks again, Paul. I know you got a busy day, so I want to respect your time. Thank you
Thank you,
again,
man.
buddy.
Nice to see you.
All right, guys. That was the interview with Paul Reiser. Subscribe, rate, review, and we'll see you guys next week on Razor Riffs.